Hello Turcaholics and welcome back for another Super League season. This is Season 2, Episode 1. We decided to break it up a little bit, make it a little easier for you guys. Of course, we're going to start covering the 2019-2020 Super League season officially in this episode as the first match day has been played. Joining me this week are Umut Naderi, Özer Dindjer is coming back, and Pat Cox. Guys, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And of course, Burak isn't here. He had work commitments. And I am, of course, Kaan Bayazit. I am terrible at that, at introducing myself. I always assume people know who I am because I'm such a big shot. But
Such a modest man you are.
Indeed. But we have so much to talk about, and we don't have that much time because, of course, Özer, you're at a new job in Chicago, and you only have a roughly an hour window, so we'll try and shoot through this. So quickly,
I do appreciate that, guys. It's just that the time difference is not ideal for watching or even discussing football. So, but I'll give it my best shot. We'll see how it works.
Yeah, those Champions League games, it's gonna be annoying for you, I bet.
I know. I'm going to have to pull a sickie on those days.
Anyway, let's quickly dive into the Europa League results. Trabzonspor went through as they beat Sparta Prague 2-1 at the Akyazi Stadium, which was filled nearly to capacity with 40,775 spectators. That's a very impressive turnout for Trabzonspor's return to Europe. Of course, they will now go on and play two more legs against AEK Athens. This was an interesting match. Trabzonspor took an early lead. Sparta Prague went down to 10 men, but then in the end they still got an equalizer, and Trabzonspor won it in the 5th or 6th minute of added time after I believe it was Noakaeme had initially missed a penalty kick a couple of minutes earlier, but then Filip Novak won the tie. Trabzon were going through anyway on away goals because the first leg was finished 2-2. We're not going to spend too much time on this. Quickly head over to the other match. Malatyaspor eliminated 1-0 against Partizan. They did win that match 1-0, but they lost the away match 3-1. And the reason we're not spending too much time on this is, of course, we already went over this a little bit, and we already have the preview up for the AEK match as well, so you can go listen to that. That's the previous episode to this. I don't know if any of you guys have anything to add in regards to this match.
Mm-hmm. Nothing really, but congratulations to Trabzon. They pulled a win over at the end, and it's a shame that Malatya didn't go through because they were much better than Partizan in that second leg. Could have easily won it 2 or 3-0.
Yeah, 4 games in Europe for Malatyaspor, 2 wins, 1 draw, and a loss. Unfortunately, they are out. Let's move over to those Super League results and match day 1 of the Turkish Super League 2019-2020 season. So let's start off with Friday. The reigning, defending Turkish Super League champions Galatasaray were away at newly promoted side Denizlispor on Friday. That was a season opener. Denizlispor winning this one 2-0. The first shocker of the weekend, but it's certainly not the last. Goals here coming in the 75th minute through Recep Niyaz and I believe the 5th minute of added time through Hugo Rodallega. But that's not really telling the full story here because Selçuk İnan missed a penalty in the 29th minute, and Marcao, I was almost going to say Radamel Falcao. It's just Marcao. Marcao getting a yellow card in the 34th minute and a second yellow card in the 43rd minute, getting sent off. That definitely had an impact on the remainder of the match. Very warm circumstances, humid. Denizli, the warmest city in Turkey, as Umut pointed out off air. So a very difficult night for Galatasaray all in all. Özer, I'm going to throw to you first. Your take on the match.
Yeah, I mean, firstly, I'll say that we deserved to lose the game. Didn't really play any sort of meaningful football that I could see. Marcao, Luyendama, the dynamic duo in defence who were, in my opinion, overrated far too much at the end of last season, really showed that they haven't really switched on for the new season yet. Marcao made 2 really dumb yellow card decisions, 2 really stupid fouls, deserved to be sent off, and then left Luyendama in a position of weakness for the rest of the match. He got pretty much schooled twice in the second half by Denizli's attackers and could have contributed to 2 more goals. So I'm thinking, even if we were to sign Falcao, I don't know how much it would really lift our team to the next level, because we still have a lot of amateurish and kind of foolish and frustrating mistakes in defence week in, week out, which I see that continuing. I find it difficult to get too hopeful about the season, given that we're back-to-back champions. We've got by far and away the most expensive squad, which will be boosted further if and when we sign Falcao. I just feel as though all of this stuff on paper might not come to life in reality. I don't know if Umut is as pessimistic as I am, but I don't have good vibes about the start of this season.
Well, we started the game with 4-3-3 as what we did in the friendlies, and in which Seri lied at the behind of Belhanda and Selçuk, which didn't really benefit to Galatasaray during the friendlies, because Seri is a small guy, like physically, and he had some issues covering up for the whole defensive duties in the midfield, as Belhanda is given more offensive role compared to the last season. And Selçuk tried to help him out, or help Seri out, but he's also done due to his old age. And as I mentioned earlier in earlier episodes, I am lost how 34-year-old Selçuk is completely done, while 5-year-old Emre Belözoğlu is rocking the midfield for Fenerbahçe right now, like even earning a spot in national team recently. I have big respect for him, and seeing how Selçuk awful state, I'm done. Anyway, Babel and Jimmy started on the flanks, and our infamous Cagney as a sole striker. It is also worth to mention that Cagney's second game this season, he only played 1 friendly, which is not enough, and he's not ready. So it's actually could be said that Galatasaray's plan didn't work out because we aren't ready enough for the team, for the game. Also, actually, game started pretty well for us earlier, and Selçuk missed the penalty, who I also remember as a penalty master, but it didn't work out as well. And the former Fenerbahçe wonder kid, Recep Niyaz, hit the post earlier in the game, then he scored a wonder strike from like 30 meters. So actually that decided the game. The fast flank man, Barrow, made a struggle for Galatasaray, and we couldn't find the net at the game.
Yeah, and I especially took notice of the fact that Denizlispor really struggled in the opening 10 to 15 minutes. They really seemed to take a while to get composed, to adjust to the level of the Super League. I had the impression that they were nervous, but once they got through that first 15-minute or so period, I think the match became rather balanced. Babel was threatening early on. He was, I think, for Galatasaray, the best man in attack at least. But of course, as the match went on and they went down to 10 men in the heat, in the humidity, less and less attacking play from Galatasaray, which is to be imagined. But on the other end, Denizlispor didn't really create much in terms of clear-cut chances until that Recep Niyaz wonder strike. There were a couple of opportunities, and Recep Niyaz was involved in almost any of them. And I was just about to say on Twitter when I was watching the game that Recep Niyaz is always involved in every single attack, but he has absolutely no end product. And then, of course, he had that amazing wonder strike. So me just thinking it already jinxed you guys. Pat, do you have any special notes that you have on this match? Anything you want to point out?
Yeah, I think it was a fairly balanced game. I guess it would have been very different if Selçuk had scored the early penalty. Guys, is that more like a sort of Galatasaray tradition? Or, I mean, I was quite surprised that he stepped up rather than Diagne. But
well, he's sort of as Umut said, that the penalty master. I mean, he had one job and that he was still good at despite his aging stature, and he always scored penalties as far as I could remember. And so when he stepped up, I thought, well, at least he's going to have one function on the pitch. At least he's going to put us 1-0 up. But the way he stepped up, he was so lethargic and slow. There was no direction or accuracy on the ball, and he just looked totally washed up. And I was really surprised. I thought at least he's going to step up and score a penalty, but no, nothing. At least potentially now that we've signed Nzonzi, we could say potentially that Selçuk is going to be certainly off the starting lineup for the rest of the season, at least in the Super League.
Yeah. because it looked like a very evenly matched game, to be honest. I think, obviously, that wonder strike for Denizli, followed by the late goal. I guess 2-0 is maybe a little bit of even 2-0 even is quite an overstretch in terms of how the game played out. But no, I think Nzonzi will definitely change the dynamic of the Galatasaray team.
And yeah, I mean, it is definitely a fact that this match had two massive turning points. The first one being Selçuk missing that penalty, and the second one, the red card. Did you guys feel it was a harsh red card, or do you think it was justified, Galatasaray gentlemen?
Two naive yellow cards, like we've seen him do before. So the red card was pretty fair, in my opinion.
They were on point, because what Marco did, just silly, like getting in too fast, like clumsy. So he deserved that. Yeah,
the first one I thought was a smart one, I would say, because I think if he doesn't pull Rodallega down there, he is true on goal. And people listening who might have not seen it will think, well, isn't that a red card? And no, because of course Luyendama was still a couple in the vicinity, so it wouldn't have been a last man per se. But I think he did the smart thing there to pull him down, to not give away a decent goal-scoring opportunity. But the second one, if you're on a yellow card and he just comes in a little bit uncontrolled, barges in, it's a little, yeah, he should know better. Of course, I think Marcao is, 23, 24, so he's still young, he's still learning, but yeah, that was not the smartest yellow to take. And yeah, Selçuk, I think, Umut, you mentioned in our group chat that that's probably the fourth penalty in his entire career.
Yeah, it was like one against Fenerbahçe in a Super Cup game, one against Gençler Birliği, I believe. What he played really well, but he missed the penalty, and two more actually, like this game, yeah, and the other one I can't remember right now.
Well, anyway, Denizlispor with that win, of course, starting off their return to the Super League in 9 years, off on a flying start. They get off on a flying start, and it's a great start for them to get back into it. And well, let's hope for them that it's going to be a fun season. I think those first 10-15 minute jitters will now have been overcome, and they can go into with confidence into next week's match day. Just before we move on to the Saturday results, the attendance for the Denizli Galatasaray match was 13,713, by the way. Let's move over to Saturday. Gençler Birliği hosted Çaykur Rizespor there. Here the attendance was 2,643. So that's a little bit of a drop-off to Friday's match, but we're kind of used to Gençler Birliği having low turnouts. This match ended 1-0 in favor of Çaykur Rizespor. And again, a red card played a key role here. Flavio Ramos got sent off in the 39th minute after seeing his second yellow card. He had been booked just 3 minutes earlier. Dario Melniak getting the only goal of the match in the 66th minute, and Bogdan Stanku had a very late equalizer disallowed. I believe that was already an added time. So the full-time scoreline reads 1-0 to Çaykur Rizespor. Gençler Birliği, the champions of the Birinci League last season, coming back up after just one season of absence in the Super League, but they start off with a loss in Ankara. Pat, any special notes you have on this game?
To start off with, at first I just assumed that they had some ban maybe sort of carrying on from the previous season, because I was quite surprised. The first game after being champions for the League One to then only turn up with 2,000 isn't great.
They don't have a lot.
That's Gençler Birliği, then that's Gençler Birliği, I guess. But there you go. No, I thought it was quite an equal game. Obviously, Stange missed a 2, which obviously could have swung it in favour of Gençler Birliği, but Rize obviously kept going and got the goal and ultimately the win at the end of the day.
Rizespor post Okan Buruk, did they disappoint or did they leave a good impression on you, Umut?
Well, they also lost their key player Atif Şeşu to which team he went to?
Antalya.
Antalya. So that changed their plans a bit in the attacking wise. Now Boldrin has the key role in the attacking part, and also their back players, Melniak and the other one they are good on attack. They have good talents on attacking side, so they have all the support they can have to the team. Also, the goal came from the as back player from the box. Also, good part for them.
Great goal too.
I thought the Benyak's goal was potentially goal of the week. One of the goals of the week, candidates at least.
Yeah.
Really great strike.
Yeah.
Him and his former teammate, I think, are going to hash it out between the two of them.
Yeah.
What did you guys think of Gençlerbirliğ? Did they look capable to you? Of obviously that red card played a big role in their demise here, so to speak. But it's not like they look out of character in the Super League or anything. They didn't stand out as a weak duckling or anything like that.
I agree. I think they played pretty competitively. It was quite an even match despite the red card. Stanku came close twice to scoring. I think you guys already mentioned, had one goal ruled offside. So I think they can learn a lot from this, but I wouldn't be too disappointed if I were one of the 2,000 Gençler fans this weekend.
No, for sure. I don't think we have much more to add here, so let's move on to the next match. It's Kayserispor versus Alanyaspor. The attendance here was 9,966. That's a decent turnout, I'd say, for a relatively low-profile match. Of course, Kayserispor have a pretty big stadium, so the question is, should these clubs really be playing in such big stadiums when they can only fill it for like a third of capacity? But that's another discussion to be had. This match here, Kayserispor losing at home against Alanyaspor. Let's start off with one of the highlights is in the 3rd minute, unfortunately, Alpay Çelebi suffered an ACL injury, and he'll be out for another 6 or 7 months, and he had one, I believe, at the start of last season, so that's not good for a young player suffering back-to-back ACL injuries. That might be, not necessarily the end of his career, but maybe he won't be achieving his potential, so to speak. But let's move on, because this was a pretty interesting game, because Pedro Henrique got on the score sheet in the 75th minute. At least he thought he did, but that one was ruled offside. He was already celebrating that one. That one got disallowed pretty quickly, but then he gets one later too. In the 86th minute, Papi Cissé puts Alanyaspor ahead from a corner, Salih Uçan corner, which I believe Jalma then headed through, and Cissé poked in. He gets back on the score sheet. He of course got a bunch of goals last season already for Alanyaspor, so he just keeps going as he was last season. And then in the added time, Pedro Henrique again sees a goal disallowed for offside. This time it was a VAR decision. That's a very unfortunate debut for Pedro Henrique, because 2 goals and both decent goals, and both got disallowed, so that's unfortunate for him. Kayserispor losing their first match at home. Özer, going to throw to you first. Your take on this match, anything that stands out to you?
Well, normally I make quite detailed notes for these games so that I have stuff to reflect on during our chat. But in this match, I've just written VAR, VAR, VAR. And I think that kind of sums up my thoughts on the game. The whole game was defined by the VAR decisions. Otherwise, there wasn't too much more to add. And thoughts go out to the injured player as well, like you touched on at the beginning.
And what do you think, Pat? Anything except for VAR on your notes, or does Özer's description fit the match, so to speak?
No, I agree. Yeah, I think even with VAR, it's a couple of sort of suspect calls potentially, which I know VAR's meant to stop. But Pedro Henrique sort of stood out for me, and I think we're going to see more and more as time goes on. But those sort of late, what you think are winners, only to be sort of crestfallen when VAR comes up and says that, oh, sorry, you were 5 centimetres offside.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that delay is quite key, because when you watch those 2 goals, when you watch the players celebrating like they've just won the World Cup, and the emotion on the team and the squad around them and the management, and that lasts for like 2, 3, 4 minutes.
Yeah.
Sometimes, and then the ref comes out and says no goal. That's horrible to see, and that really deflates the team.
Yeah.
Sure.
It takes something out of it has more of an impact on the rest of the game than just correcting an incorrect call.
For sure, yeah.
That needs to be looked into.
Yeah, I think Besiktas had that last season against Trabzonspor or something. I don't remember exactly which match it was, but like Dorukhan scored twice or something, and then he had like 2 goals disallowed, and then still got on the score sheet, and then he got like an equalizer. He was celebrating, but then it took like ages, and the goal got disallowed. And after that, you just see that it's their confidence sunk into their boots, and like all the gas was out of the team, so it can have a really deflating impact, as Özer pointed out. But obviously here the goal came very late and at a time already. The first one was disallowed pretty quickly, and I think that was just a good example of the linesman letting the play go on in case it's not offside, so VAR can intervene should it not be, and then he raised his flag after the goal was scored. So I think that was okay, but then the second one, of course, the later one, the guy's been celebrating for half an hour already, and then the decision comes. That's very unfortunate for him. And one of the things that also jumped out as well a lot, and not just in this game but in all the games, is that we see referees pulling a lot of yellow cards because of a new guideline. Basically, I just picked this up during one of the matches, I think, or during one of the Marathon Post commentaries, I believe it was, where if players swarm the referee for protest, the referee has to give at least one yellow card. Apparently that's a new guideline, so that's why we're seeing so many yellow cards now for protest. That was also the case in this match, I believe, for Pedro Henrique. He got booked on his first goal, I believe. Let's move over to the evening match then on Saturday. Sivasspor trashing my poor Besiktas 3-0. And the attendance here was 13,428. That's a decent turnout as well. Mert Hakan Yandaş getting on the score sheet here in the 30th minute to put Sivasspor 1-0 up. Then we had an injury to Sivasspor goalkeeper Mamadou Samassa after a collision with Tyler Boyd. I think he had a concussion, had to be taken off the pitch and taken to the hospital. He walked off, but then towards the sideline he collapsed. So for a moment there, I think some of us were thinking the worst, that he might have had an epileptic attack or something, and he swallowed his tongue, I even saw someone mention. But fortunately that wasn't the case. I think he just had a concussion, which is no laughing matter, of course. And he was subbed off, taken to the hospital. After the match, everything seemed to be okay with him. Tyler Boyd, however, continued with a bandage in the second half. He even got booked for this. The referee had judged that he had judged this as dangerous play because he went up with his boot to control the ball, got the ball, but then Samassa basically collided with him like a fraction of a second later. And the big problem here wasn't the high boot or anything, but it was just the players went head to head really hard. Their heads just smacking together, and Tyler Boyd finished this match, but he was really good, and he was decent, very good, active in the first half, making lots of good runs and all that kind of stuff. But in the second half, he was a ghost. So I honestly think he had a concussion too, and he should have been taken off. Anyway, moving on to the second goal that came in the 54th minute through Mustafa Yatabare, a very nice goal from the former Konya and Trabzonspor striker. And then Emre Kilinç putting the cherry on top in the 76th minute with a lovely long-range strike. I think goalkeeper Utku Yuvakaran should have had that though. But the full-time scoreline 3-0. Besiktas losing on the opening match day for the first time since, 2011 or something. But 3-0, that's a serious trashing. It's the first time Besiktas haven't scored on the opening match day in, I don't know how long. I believe 1994 or something. A really long time ago. So, very poor start for Abdullah Avcı at Besiktas. Umut, what do you think? Oh, you didn't really watch the full game, did you? Özer, did you manage to catch the full match by any chance?
Yeah, I saw extended highlights, and I'm kind of surprised that you didn't mention the two potential penalty calls for Adam Laic.
Right.
Yeah, they were my notes.
I think that Besiktas were robbed of two very clear penalties. There was no attempt to play the ball. Laic was brought down clearly in the penalty box, but the ref...
The reason I did not put that in my notes is because at that point I had already zoned out because I think it was already 2 or 3-0. As soon as I think Besiktas came out of the dressing room really hungry. I think they played really well for 7-8 minutes, and they looked very likely to score. And then Yatabare basically scores out of nowhere because Medel gives the ball away. And that's the thing with all three these goals, like. The scoreline would say that Sivas had a great game and Besiktas were absolutely horrible, but all three of those goals are individual mistakes, I think. On the first goal, you can clearly see Gökhan Gönül goes and covers Emre Kilinç in the corner. And Quaresma, like a headless chicken, also goes and runs to Emre for some reason instead of marking his man, which is Ziad, the left back. And he just leaves him with tons of space, gives him half a century to cross. And yeah, of course, then you're asking for it. I think up until that moment, it was a very even match. There was a really good chance for Yatabare on a corner, I think. And then there were a couple of opportunities, well, half chances. It was a pretty rigid, closed game, but Besiktas were okay up until that point, but I think as soon as they went a goal down, the problems that they have and have had for the entire training camp, obviously Burak Yilmaz not being present, Guven Yalcin can't fill his shoes, Ricardo Quaresma being completely over the hill right now, he can't seem to get past this man anymore, he's an absolute problem there, and I don't think that means that as a Besiktas fan, for saying that you don't love, respect, or cherish Quaresma as a legend or whatever you want to call him. But he's almost 36 years old, and I don't know, I have never seen such a decline in 6 months, but he has gone from a player that could still be serviceable in the first half of last season to a player that's completely useless now when he's on the pitch. I mean, yeah, he can maybe give 1 or 2 good passes, but you expect more from your left winger. You expect him to weigh on a defense. You expect him to get past this man, to get to the touchline, to put in crosses, to make actions. But he doesn't anymore. He just can't. He just gets completely locked down. And that's one of Besiktas are basically playing with 10 men when Quaresma's on the pitch. Add to that Guven, who does very little to weigh on the defense. You're down to 9. So Besiktas have huge issues. Obviously, they have injuries, but that's not it. That's not all of it. They look like an incomplete puzzle to me. I don't know if you would agree with that, guys.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, I think, like you said, today and for the next few weeks, you're lost from the front and the kind of the rear of your spine, if you like, because you've got Burak who's out for a few weeks. You've got Karius who's out for a few weeks, which is a huge loss.
He might actually be back quicker than expected because he's already back in training, apparently. Yeah.
Okay, that'll be good. Huge for you guys, because even if you kind of zoom out of that and give it a more macro look, you look back at the Besiktas summer training camp. I think you guys lost all but one game, which you drew, and didn't score a goal in any.
Yeah.
So there's some serious question marks with the completeness of the squad there. So I think Abdullah just got his work cut out if he wants to get off to a flying start at Besiktas, because it's looking tricky for now.
Yeah, one of the most puzzling decisions for me was starting Gökhan Gönül and starting Caner Erkin. I understand Pedro Reboccio was only at the club for a week, but Caner had such a terrible training camp. He was really bad in those friendlies. I just think you throw in that new guy straight away. I just let him settle, let him get a feel, let him play with his teammates. It's a difficult away game, I understand that, but just let him play. I think if he's, let him. Either he'll drown or he'll, or he'll sink or he'll stay above water. But
sink or swim, as they say.
Yeah, exactly, sink or swim. I'm pretty sure. And the same thing for Douglas. I mean, Gökhan had surgery during the middle of the training camp, didn't play a single friendly match. You could see that in this match. He was not match fit at all. I know Douglas had a small injury during the season, during the training camp, and that makes things only more difficult for the coach, but I would have started both Reboccio and Douglas, and I think you would have had a far more sturdy defense. And I didn't even think that the defense played a bad match, because actually Victor Ruiz, the new guy who made his debut, who hadn't played a friendly match either, I think he had an amazing game. He was flawless, and he had 4 or 5 amazing interceptions to prevent Sivasspor from getting a good goal-scoring opportunity. He was really good, but the individual performances let them down. On the first goal, Quaresma completely went in the mist. On the second goal, Medel just gives the ball away clumsily, which leads to a very good goal from Yatabare. Of course, what Yatabare does with that ball still, I mean, you lose the ball in midfield, but what Yatabare does, that's something he probably will do once a season, maybe, if he's lucky to score a goal like that. And then the third one is just a long-range shot, and Utku, it's in the center of his goal. I think a good goalkeeper should always have that ball. I mean, the commentators like, oh, Nefis bir goal or whatever, praising the goal, and of course it's a great goal from Emre, but I think when the ball is that far to the center of the goal, it's not going to either corner. There's no excuse for the goalkeeper to not have that. I think it's always going to be counted on his konto. Anyway, guys, I've been ranting. Obviously, 3-0 loss. You have to indulge me for a minute, but Pat, your thoughts on this match?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you in terms of it being quite an even game and 3-0 not really showing the actual kind of 90 minutes, to be honest. The second and third goal were, well, I've got banger for number 2, very English word there, stunner for number 3, which might be a sort of anti-BGK exaggeration there, but I thought they're very good. And having suffered many of those kind of one-hit wonders as a Fenerbahce fan, I know there's nothing you can do about it. And, even if it's a sort of a bad team or, lucky break, for example, I guess you have to close them down. I guess the goalkeeper has to be, in the right place at the right time. But ultimately, there are some that there's just nothing you can do about. And, but I think, as Özer said as well, 2 penalty calls that, to be honest, both should have gone Besiktas's way. I'm surprised that both of them were sort of ignored, because at least one of them I would have thought would have been given, but it's the football, that's the football, as they say.
Yeah, but in the VAR era, it becomes even more puzzling, though, that those things get ignored. I mean, I can completely understand the referee missing that, but VAR is looking at it then. And yeah, I seem to have the feeling that in some games they seem to be going through it with how did you put it, like a fine-tooth comb or something, going through all the positions, checking, isn't there a penalty, like looking for it almost. And then you have, in other matches, you have these relatively clear penalties. We're going to get to one later on, I think, for Ankara, was it Ankara Gücü, where there's a relatively clear handball and it just gets ignored. I don't really understand that yet. That's a big issue I have with VAR. I think VAR is great, but the consistency in how it gets used is a problem that really has to improve. But that's something.
Do you think the Denizli game, the Barrow got away?
Oh yeah,
and it got called a handball.
Yeah, that was wrong.
Didn't given an opportunity to score.
Yeah, that was wrong. They should have let him go through. If it was a handball, should have disallowed it with VAR.
Exactly, yeah.
That was
and
a
similar position happened in the Fenerbahce game as well.
Yeah, that was. I don't remember the Fenerbahce position, but that against Denizli, you're definitely right. That was. I think he rather cleanly got it with the shoulder. I don't even think it was like close to his arm. Yeah, so he was true on goal. Yeah, that was a really poor call. I didn't point that out, but that was a very poor call. I think those are the types of things where exactly, even if you think it's a handball as a referee, you let it go, and if it is, you disallow it. But you need to be 100% sure on those types of positions to say stop, I think. And even then, I would just let it go. If it's wrong, VAR will disallow it.
Yeah.
You just destroy the chance of being a goal scored.
Yeah.
So I think it's like, in the same manner that coaches and footballers are going to have to get used to sort of different rules and, VAR sort of coming in and changing the thing, as are the sort of, the 4 officials, especially the main one on the pitch, because it's more of like I guess it's a technical change in terms of, whereas maybe a few seasons pre VAR, they would have had to have made that call and maybe lent towards calling something if they weren't sure, and to be like, well, I thought I saw it was closer to his arm than his chest.
Yeah, and instinctively they're going to be inclined to make that call, and sometimes it's just something that goes like snap, and they can't really. Once they blow that whistle, you can't turn it back anymore.
Exactly, yeah.
And I
guess it's the years and years of them learning certain laws, learning to be kind of like have their eye on the game and trying to sort of notice everything that's going on.
Yeah. And
this applies to the referees as much as it does to the linesman and the 4th official as well.
Yeah, definitely.
But then moving to something where they're just their inner voice is going to have to get trumped by their sort of new inner voice that says, just let it go, see what happens.
Yeah.
Which
is something that might take a couple of seasons for it really to sink through. I mean, you have to keep in mind as well that a young referee who's up and coming, he's going to start in the lower leagues and then he starts in the Super League. Maybe he's working with VAR for the first time. So basically for every single referee, especially new ones, that process restarts basically. Of course, they will have gotten coached in VAR, but I don't know. It's these types of things shouldn't happen, but they happen, and they're human mistakes still. VAR is not going to be able to completely remove human error. That's clear. Anyway, one more thing I wanted to point out here is something I found actually a little sad. Is during the whole collision, Tyler Boyd got booked, which I thought was a little tasteless by the ref. But that's that. Then he also books Laic because he thinks Laic is complaining, but Laic was just basically trying to explain him what happened. Like he was like even using like hand signals and stuff, and he books him. And I get this rule of, look, when they're swarming the ref, you have to book one. I think that's a really good initiative because in Turkey there's way too much of that, way too much complaining about every single position, and sometimes they're right to complain, but it doesn't really matter because it doesn't have an effect because the decision is made. It's not going to get overturned anyway because you're complaining. Obviously what they're trying to do is influence the referee for maybe getting a favorable call down the road, but I think it's a really good initiative to give yellow cards there. But Laic wasn't even complaining, and that makes it a little, I mean, that yellow card, that could potentially mean a couple of weeks down the road he's going to miss a crucial game. So it's a little unfortunate. And I think we're going to see a lot of those types of yellow cards, especially with the foreigners, because obviously the referees, many of them I don't think speak proper English or anything like that. So we're going to get a lot of those where they think, oh, they're giving us lip, we're going to book them. And actually they're just speaking to them in a normal manner in English or something. But those guys, yeah.
Mert Hakan Yendeş and Emre Kılınç are performing really well, and even Erdoğan Yeşilyurt. They're all 25-year-old players starting for Sivasspor at the game. And I think they started after Syriac and Robinho's departure because probably they had
Emre
their
was
name
already playing regularly.
Yeah. Because they are big players and they had their name written down to board first. So great careers, great players, but they prevented these guys for shining their names for themselves. So I'm happy to see them going through and playing really well and achieving, because a team, young and energetic, and most importantly, eager to win, is important to have.
That's an interesting point because it reminds me of something I read on Twitter the other day. I don't remember, so please do forgive me if you're listening and you made this point, but I saw someone make this point of when we still had the foreign rule, the big three, the big four, they all plucked away all the best Turkish players everywhere. And it left the other teams with basic trash. Or, well, not trash, but very average, subpar Turks. And they also had that same foreigner rule applied to them, so they had to play with really poor Turkish players. But now that foreigner rule is basically gone, we see a lot more young guys like this performing well, and maybe not at the age of 21, 22, maybe they're not super talents, but these guys are getting more minutes, they're evolving, they're maturing, they're becoming better players when they're 24, 25, and we're seeing a lot more good Turks now in these mid-table or whatever, all the sides, and we're seeing guys go to AS Roma just this week with Mert Yilmaz, I think, or what's his name? Mert Çetin. Yeah, going to AS Roma from Gençlerbirliği. We're going to see more and more of that, I think, of the good kids. Instead of them getting plucked away by the big tree straight away, they're going to get an opportunity outside of the country. And it's another reason why this foreign limit is a bad idea, TFF. But let's move over to Sunday now. The first match on Sunday was a little bit of a penalty shout contest, I felt like. Konyaspor Ankaragücü ended in a 0-0 draw. This was the second highest attendance of the match day, with 20,929 fans turning up in Konya. Ömer Ali Şahiner hit the post in the 15th minute, and that's I put that down as one of my notes here because that's really one of the biggest highlights of the match. Apart from that, there were multiple penalty shouts. The most clear one, I think, was for Ankaragücü. That wasn't the first half, but I couldn't find the timestamp on the minute. I think it was a cross from Kitsiu that got handled. It wasn't necessarily a deliberate handball, but there's a new guideline this season that went in effect for the 2019-2020 season. If a player uses their arms to make their body unnaturally bigger, whether it's intentional or not, and it hits their arm, hits their hand, whatever, that's deemed a penalty or a foul or whatever you want to call it. So I think there's no way around it. That should have been a penalty. And then there's a couple of shouts later on in the second half, especially on Bajic. For Konyaspor, but I had the feeling that from the beginning onwards, the crowd and Konyaspor were fishing for a penalty. I don't know if you guys would agree with that. Özer, I'm gonna try you first.
Maybe. There were definitely quite a few penalty shots in this game, which defined the fixture. I don't know how much influence the crowd would have had, although I suppose Konya is one of the better attended home matches, so possibly. It's not something that really shouted out to me, though. In fact, the big takeaway for me is from Ankaragücü's side. I wonder if Orgil is going to be the same now that his buddy Tyler Boyd has gone to Besiktas. It's going to be interesting to watch his form.
And what do you think, Pat? Did you have the same feeling I did, or do you agree more with Özer?
I think it's a split, really. I think it'll be interesting to see across the board, where boots are filled, let's say. But just to reiterate your point as well, I think, I think I remember seeing that same tweet that you did as well. So someone we obviously following in common must have shared that or something. But no, I agree, and I think will only have a negative effect.
Yeah. What about you, Umut? Were they fishing for a penalty, or do you have anything else to note on this match?
Well, it's a normal behavior when you're in a need of goal and you're at home.
Yeah, but they already started it like really early on. Like in the first couple of minutes, everything was, the crowd was going crazy, shouting for a penalty every single time, and so were Konyaspor's players. I felt like, and ironically, I felt like Ankaragücü is the team that definitively should have had a penalty. I don't know about Konya. They had a couple of positions towards the end. I think one on Bajic where definitely there could have been a penalty. Maybe he was looking for it a little bit, but the Ankaragücü one, according to the letter of the law, was pretty clear. Was it an intentional handball? No. Would I have given it last season? No. But this season, I think you have to give it.
Yeah. What I think is a player, defender should tie his hands to his back to prevent such kind of an act, because this is how the rules work. So you have to prevent it by yourself. So why not help yourself out? Just prevent it.
Yeah, but I think that's a little. I mean, I think Thomas Sivok did that a lot. He used to tie his hands behind his back a lot when he was trying to cover a winger. But I think it's very counterintuitive, and it kind of. I have the feeling that it kind of limits your movement a little bit as a defender.
Yeah, it destroys your balance, but that's how the rules work. So majority of the defenders tie their hands, so you have to do that as well, because these are the rules.
Yeah, it's tough.
You have
I
to
think
obey them. Yeah.
It's another one of those things, like what Pat was saying earlier, what the referees have to get used to. I think this is the same thing that's going to happen for the defenders. I think we're going to see a lot of penalties like that this season, where there's an arm that's not next to their body, and was it? Oh, actually, that's something we even missed in the Galatasaray match in the wall when Babel handled the ball.
Yeah, man. Oh,
it was a pretty clear penalty too. We didn't even mention.
I don't think it's inside the box.
I don't know if it was actually, but
it's just outside of the box, just outside. But
if it was outside the box, it's the only excuse for VAR not to intervene there, because if if it was, that was crystal clear.
Yeah.
But this was Konyaspor opening their new season in front of a decent crowd. But again, I think it's a decent crowd, but it's a 40+ K stadium. Konya can fill easily a 25K stadium, I think. But I just question those decisions of giving these clubs these massive stadiums. I think Konyaspor could have done well with a 25, 30K stadium. And the reason I'm talking about this is our next match is Göztepe. Because I think Özer shared a link earlier this week where there was talk of Göztepe's new stadium, which is going to be 20,000, which is relatively small.
That's right, it's about 20,000, which they could fill double. If capacity could allow it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing with Göztepe. Göztepe is one of those few clubs that actually have a decent fan base. They could actually probably consistently fill a 20K stadium. And apparently now they're thinking of expanding into 25. And I think that's actually rather perfect for Göztepe. 25, 30K would be perfect for them. I think the same applies to a club as Konyaspor. A 25, 30K stadium is perfect for them. When we see clubs like a Başakşehir, I understand that they got a 17K stadium because, they're going into Europe and stuff like that, and you need a certain amount of a minimum amount of seats, I believe, to be able to play group stage, Champions League, Europa League, stuff like that. So I get that. But then there's other clubs like Antalyaspor who have, a 35K stadium that they never fill. And you have all these clubs that have these types of stadiums. And then Izmir, which is the third biggest city in Turkey, doesn't get a proper stadium. And the same thing could be said about Ankaragücü. And Gençlerbirliği, of course, Gençlerbirliği, like we said earlier, they have low attendances, but Ankara Gücü are a club that can fill a 20k stadium easily. And the new stadium in Ankara is just 20k, I believe. It's another puzzling decision for me when you see all these other cities like Malatya get almost a 30k stadium, Konya getting a 40 plus k stadium, and I think Gazişehir got a new stadium that's relatively big, even though they don't have massive crowds.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I totally agree with you. Unfortunately, it's politics that's behind a lot of these decisions.
Yeah. Anyway, Göztepe are still playing in another stadium. Sorry to cut you off there, Pat. But so their turnout was a little lower here. But their turnout will be bigger once the new stadium is filled. But their attendance here was 8,575. And Göztepe lost 1-0 at home. Diego Angelo getting the only goal here for Antalyaspor in the 29th minute. And Pat, please finish your thought.
Yeah, sorry. Just to go back to that point regarding the stadiums. I mean, yeah, a lot of it's sort of to do with sort of politics or sort of local governments making the decisions rather than the clubs. But I think there's 2 points in terms of looking at why fans aren't going to matches when we know that the atmosphere in Turkish stadiums is incredible. The population loves football. It's probably for me, it's a mix of one, possibly sort of putting off fans, and you're not just able to sort of get a ticket from the ticket booth, or maybe like over in some other countries, just being able to get things online. But that extra step that you kind of have to do, I'm sure, has an impact on, especially in the newer generation. But also to some extent, maybe the sort of the drop in the fall of the lira and the general state of to some extent the economy, higher unemployment and all that, because ticket prices aren't cheap. If you look comparatively at how much, let's say, if 1 lira was €1, for example, you'd be paying big money every single week to go to matches, and I think to some extent that does put fans off when they have to choose between going to a match or spending that money on groceries or whatever. But because as we all know very well, that they love their football. I just wonder, there must be some hurdle, I guess, or hurdles that prevents football-loving population from ending up in stadiums. And
the reason I picked this match as well to talk about this a little bit is because I don't really have any notes otherwise than the goal, because so little happened in this game. Göztepe are off on a bad start again, guys. Are they going to be in for another season like last year where they're going to narrowly be avoiding relegation? Or do you think Eren Derdiok is going to start scoring some goals, Umut?
Well, both Göztepe and Antalyaspor looked really poor on creating chances. Göztepe looked worse, and hence they lost the game, even though they had some talented players on the field for them, such as Serdar Güller, Andre Castro, Halak Bunar, and should I call Yasin as a talented player? I don't know. However, neither of them find a gap for their talents, to show their talents. And Göztepe's whole attack looked so slow and random. Like, it looks like they haven't trained all over the summer. They just got out on the field randomly, so random. And Antalya defended all these attacks with such ease. And after scoring the goal, they just defended it pretty well. I also watched two ex-Galatasaray players, Yasin and Eren Derdiok. Both were such disappointments for their teams, because while I was watching, I haven't even noticed Eren was on the field at the time.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
Yeah. I just learned that he was playing. He played a whole 90 minutes at the game, and I haven't noticed like he was a ghost on the field. I cannot fathom how Eren Derdiok remained on the field for 90 minutes. What kind of ineffectiveness. And Antalyaspor captain and everything, Super League veteran Diego Angelo found the net from a corner kick, back post. So Antalya won the game with ease.
Okay, let's move over to the next match, the third shocker of this match day. Malatyaspor trashing Başakşehir 3-0. I didn't really point out that the Sivasspor Besiktas result was a shocker, because to me it wasn't really. I was expecting Besiktas to at least draw, at the very least, but I wasn't. I just didn't fathom a possibility for them to win, because the team was such, so incomplete. But here, Malatyaspor, I would call this a rather shocker because I did watch all of Malatyaspor's games in Europe, and to me, they didn't really look ready yet. But then, of course, we also watched Başakşehir, and you could say the same thing about them. But this match was definitely decided by a big decision. But before we get to that, this match ended 3-0, as I pointed out. The attendance was 6,798. But the big decision in this match came in the 67th minute when İrfan Kahveci got ejected with a second yellow card. He got booked in the 60th minute earlier, so 7 minutes earlier, and then he got his second in the 67th and got sent off. And almost instantly, Malatya struck through Guilherme, who came on as a substitute, putting them up 1-0 in the 68th minute, just a minute after that red card. Then Adis Jahovic with a very neat goal in the 87th minute puts Malatyaspor 2-0 up. And then Morike Fofana in the first minute of added time puts the cherry on the cake for Malatyaspor, making it 3-0. And Başakşehir, another disappointment for an away team. Galatasaray away, Besiktas away, Başakşehir away, the top three of last season, all losing by 2 goals or more. What can we say about that, guys? That has to be a huge surprise. I think if you put €5 on that before this match day, you're a billionaire right now. What do you guys think?
That's a great shout. But it does highlight the added level of competitiveness in the league now. There are no more any easy games. I mean, Galatasaray lost against a newly promoted side after all. So every game should be taken with utmost seriousness. And by the way, the Jahovic goal was just so bizarre. I don't think I've ever seen a goal like it. He almost flicked it up onto himself and then headed in the goal.
Then headed it. It was really good.
It's like he assisted himself, kind of thing. I wonder what kind of football fantasy points he'd get for that.
Yeah.
It was a really, really interesting and good goal, I think. What did you guys think about the yellow card? Umut, I'm going to throw to you first. Those 2 yellow cards for İrfan Can.
Yeah.
Did you feel like they were correct?
Yeah. As you mentioned before, the first yellow he got was about objection he did, a kind of an act with hand gesture. He directly to the referee, and he wasted no time giving the yellow.
He lost the ball, and I think he felt like he got fouled, and he made like a gesture.
There's no foul on the position either. He just lost his balance and lost the ball after that, and it was just so correct. I think these kind of acts should end on the fields because it just has no relation with the football.
And I think last season, I remember İrfan Can had a lot of those positions where he was acting a little bit like that. I think he learned a little bit from Emre. But I remember several games last season where there were positions where you think, maybe he could have gotten sent off, or maybe he should have sent off if he gotten the yellow earlier and stuff like that. I think this is good for players like İrfan Can because he's very talented. But I think they need to keep their attitude in check.
You have to mention that he got sent off in a European game as well in recent weeks.
Yeah, against Olympiacos.
In
the first leg.
Similar objection to the referee.
But that was understandable, I think, because that referee was an absolute C star NT.
Okay.
Pat, your take on the red card?
Yeah, I think the first one, no surprise you're going to get a yellow card for that if you're mouthing off to the ref. But again, it's just you have to be really careful when you're on a yellow. And he'd already seen 2 red cards in other games for Galatasaray and Georges-Kévin in the exact same manner. Not a straight red, but silly yellow or and then a deserved one, or vice versa, or unjustified, call it what you will. But you've got to be careful there, and he didn't. He carried on as if he hadn't seen that first yellow card and paid the price, and so did his team at the end of the day.
Let's move over to the late game on Sunday. Kasımpaşa hosting Trabzonspor. Trabzonspor, one of the top 4 of last season, one of the likely contenders for the title this season. All 3 other teams lost. You think Trabzon are gonna bag that win. Alexander Sorloth gets them off scoring in the 34th minute, puts them ahead, but just 6 minutes later, Aytaç Kara scores with a half volley, which took a deflection on Obi Mikel. The attendance here was 4,900, by the way. I just want to point that out, I forgot it. But a disappointing result for Trabzonspor. And Uğurcan had a really good match. They could have easily lost this one. They could have also won it. I think there was a very nice clip I saw of Alexander Sørloth going past the goalkeeper and then puts it next to the goal, and then the bando in the stands go wah, wah, wah, which was great.
Yeah.
But Alexander Sørloth scoring 3 goals in 3 games for his new employer, gets off on a flying start. Could have maybe scored a second one here though. What did you guys think of Trabzonspor? Are you seeing them as a serious title contender this season?
Yes, I think they're going to be up there for sure. Maybe with a bit more stamina compared to last season when they did not too bad, and then that game against Besiktas. But anyway, that's a different story. That's season 1. People can obviously listen back to how they got on then. Anyway, I think with the news of the day, it's that Daniel Sturrdige is obviously joining them. That could be a big transfer for Trabzonspor, especially if they want to be pushing not only sort of for the top 4 European place, but also potentially for the Super League title itself. Because looking at the stats of that game, while they did have 18 shots in total, only 2 of those were on target. But if you've got a experienced striker, as with Daniel Sturrige in your team, it could be a big season for them.
Yeah, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But guys, is there any things you want to point out from this match? Any thoughts?
Nothing additional. I mean, the goalkeeper was really extraordinary. He must have saved about 3 or 4, 100% goals. I mean, he made some really world-class saves there. Sørloth, again, impressed, 3 and 3. Shout out to Abdülkadir Ömer as well for his assist to Sørloth, which was really, really good. Also, Mikel, because we talked about Mikel when he signed for Trabzon in a previous episode. It's a great signing for the club, but I don't think he had the best game at all. A lot of misplaced passes. He was involved in the deflection, which led to Kasımpaşa's goal as well. So I think he's not looking very sharp, and hopefully for Trabzonspor, he's able to kind of shake that off in the next few weeks.
Yeah, and it's the same thing I heard about him from the Africa Cup, by the way, that he looked quite lethargic, didn't look very sharp.
Interesting.
So I don't know, and I think where was he last season? Middlesbrough, right? And I seem to recall that they weren't too happy with them either there, so I don't know.
I mean, maybe
they could have...
Because he's still not very old. He's 31, 32?
Yeah.
And you'd hope that a player like that, who's got a great career behind him, should be motivated by...
He's Nigerian, so he might be 38, That's just the way it is, unfortunately. So we don't really know that's his actual age. Umut, any points you want to make before we get to the slobber knocker of Monday?
Well, after Yusuf Yazıcı's departure to Lille, we saw Abdülkadir Ömer being shifted to central attacking midfielder role, like a number 10, usually appeared as a winger from the last season, while Yusuf Yazıcı handled the center. It should be the indication of how Ünal Karaman will use him for the rest of the season as well, like trying to create a maestro from him. And at the right flank, it was given to Yusuf Sarı, a newcomer from France, born 20-year-old young lad. Came for Marseille, as I suppose, but it didn't make a solid appearance for the Marseille club at the time being there. He's also left-footed, just like Abdülkadir Ömer, and he seemed a bit nervous playing his first game for Trabzonspor, but he will get over it, I think. And also, I really liked Alexander Sørloth, and who you might as well familiar from KA Ghent, from his time being there.
Didn't make too much of an impression at Ghent. I think he scored on his debut, had a good start, but then kind of faded away. But you can see that he's a decent player, good technique, decent pace, good body. And he's getting into the scoring position. So I think that the Trabzonspor are going to enjoy him this season.
I really resemble his play style to Olivier Giroud. Quite like it, and he doesn't deliver from his career stats, I think, deliver much of a goal scorer. Haven't scored 20 plus goals in a season, but he delivers
like 23
some
or
assists.
something, right? How old is he?
He delivers some kind of assists to balance that out. So
a good center forward.
Great team player, and also I really admire how they managed to transfer Daniel Sturridge from Liverpool. It's a great deal, and I think he will play as a right winger, or he could be paired up with Sorloth.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Where is he gonna slot into that team?
Yeah.
But let's talk about the details of that deal a little bit later. I want to get to the Fenerbahce match on Monday first. So the last match to close off the week 1, match day 1, Fenerbahce against newly promoted Gazişehir, their Super League debut. Of course, we all know they're kind of replacing Gaziantepspor, but officially it's their Super League debut. And Fenerbahce trashing Gazişehir at Kadıköy in front of 36,056 fans, so decently full, 2/3 full Kadıköy. And the special thing here was 3 penalties in 23 minutes. Victor Moses getting the first one in the 6th minute. I think that's the most controversial one. That's the penalty on Emre. Moses converting that in the 6th minute. Then Fenerbahce got another penalty in the 13th minute. That one I think was rather clear. But Victor Moses misses that one, or rather Günay Güvenç saves it. He went the opposite corner as he went the previous one, and Günay picked that corner and saved it. It was not a bad penalty, I think, but just telegraphed. And then again, then Vedat Muric scores an absolute screamer, controls it, I believe, with his chest, and then volleys it in from the edge of the box. That and Melniak's goal, contender for goal of the week, no doubt in my opinion. I don't know which one of the two was better. I would say this one, probably. I'm a little bit leaning towards this one. But then in the 23rd minute, another penalty called for Fenerbahce. This time Emre steps up because, of course, Victor Moses missed the first one, and Emre, of course, coolly puts that in. 3-0 at halftime. Then in the 74th minute, Nabil Dirar gets on the score sheet. That one was initially disallowed for offside, but VAR overturned it. The goal was awarded. And then Ferdi Kadiolu on his official debut in the Super League for Fenerbahce, scoring in the 88th minute. A good, neat little finish by the 19-year-old Dutch Turk. And the full-time scoreline reads 5-0 for Fenerbahce. Besiktas, Galatasaray, Trabzonspor and Başakşehir all drop points. All but Trabzonspor lose on the opening match day. Fenerbahce, who were bottom of the table for so long last season, or at least among the bottom 3, now start off their 2019-2020 campaign with an emphatic win, something that could give them wings. But I think the big talking point here are the penalties, but should it really be? Because I think Fenerbahce played a really good game. I think Gazişehir were poor, but Fener were really good and very hungry to attack, very hungry to score. Obviously, I think those really quick succession goals took Gazişehir out of the match. I don't think we really got to see the full potential of Gazişehir yet, because they do have an interesting squad, but being down 3-0 after 23 minutes, heads are gonna hang. Confidence is going to sink into their boots, and that match was over, and that was going to be a one-man show, so to speak, in the sense that Fenerbahce that one man. But let's talk about those penalties first, especially the first one. Pat, did you think that was a correct call by the referee, that first penalty?
I think so, yeah. I mean, I'm never one to kind of go gung-ho and be like, it must be a penalty. I looked at the videos and the replays, and it did look, it did look like a penalty to me, I think.
Okay, Umut, you were, I think, in agreement with me. You were a little hesitant about that first one. Did you think that was a penalty after reviewing it?
Well, I didn't see any kind of clear contact, but the players are moving, and I think it was Kruse.
Kruse or Emre. I think Emre played it in, and Kruse was the one.
Yeah, Kruse is the one who is rotating around himself, so. Any kind of a slight contact could be taken, but I think it's a pretty cheap penalty.
Okay, Özer, what do you think about that first penalty call?
Agreed with the description of it being a cheap one. But, generally, in the game finishes 5-0, you don't want to focus too much on that. Although there were 3 penalties in, 24 minutes? But I think, 2 of the 3 were pretty...
Yeah, I think the second one you really can't argue. The third one, the third one I felt was harsh because I find it very difficult to see the contact with the hand if there's an actual contact, but the hand should not be there. So I get it. If there is contact, that's of course a penalty. But I don't know, it felt a little harsh too because that cross didn't really deflect. so I didn't see a clear deviation of the ball in the replays or anything like that, so I don't even know if it definitively touched his hand. But the second one was very clear, I think. The third one, if it touches his hand, that's a clear penalty. The first one, for me, I'm kind of the same. I didn't really see contact there, but I have to say, I felt the same way about the Galatasaray penalty. I didn't see any contact there either until I got like a proper phrase frame of where you could see that the defender actually stepped on Diagne's foot. So sometimes it's just very difficult. And I can only assume that whoever's in the VAR room checked that Kruse penalty and noticed that there was contact. Otherwise, I assume they would have interjected there. But like I said, I don't really think that makes such big of a difference, because Fenerbahce were really relentless in that opening 30 minutes. I think they would have scored within 10 minutes either way, whether they got that penalty or not. Fenerbahce were impressive going forward. They weren't really tested at the back, which is their main weakness, what we saw in the training camp. I think that was already clear that going forward, Fenerbahce were going to be good this season. I think we could see that as well during the preseason. But with this win...
I think they could... Sorry to hijack you there. I think they could surprise a lot of people, including themselves, this season, given the way they played against Gaziantep. I know they're a newly promoted side and everything, but they play some really fancy football. Again, Emre is a true one of a kind, was involved in every single goal, apart from him. And is just a true example of what an athlete and what a sportsman should be in physical terms at his age. He's just amazing, absolutely amazing player.
Yeah, with Max Kruse, they have a great quality player too, who's been there since the beginning of the preseason, has had time to settle, has been playing well in those preseason matches too. He's always been one of the better players, even when they got trashed by, Bayern, was it 6-1? But even there, he was one of the better men on the pitch, I felt. And he's had time to settle. He's a great quality player. Vedat Muric has been tremendous too during the preseason, carries that on into this season, was tremendous last season, really a great get for Fenerbahce, I think. Again, I really don't think they need a first striker. I think they could use a reserve striker maybe, but I think Muric is their default first striker. Pat, would you agree with that? Are you happy with Vedat Muric as Fenerbahce's first striker?
Definitely, yeah. I think he showed his quality with that goal that he scored, absolutely powered it into the back of the net. I think just, in terms of depth, that's where the Fenerbahce fans are kind of we still just need that second striker, because, anything can happen. It could be, a red card or a ban after yet another Super Derby punch-up or whatever. Or it could just be, losing form. But I think we do need that second striker to back up. But, like you said, Max Kruse also a fantastic striker to have that, I guess, number 10 that we haven't really had since the days of Alex, really.
But do you really need that with Max Kruse now? I don't really think you need that.
I think, honestly, depth is so important in football. And I think,
Verdi?
Obviously it might be a good opportunity to sort of test him. But I think just to have that, person in between, just so that you're not kind of completely relying on someone who, obviously, he scored and it was a good goal. And he's got quality, but just to have a bit more of a rotation, to be honest, because otherwise, all it takes is 2 injuries to 2 key players, and then
just look at Besiktas.
Well, and then, like you say, the defense, where we'll see if any more transfers come in, but all it would take is a hit to our offense for our defense to suddenly sort of be put under more pressure.
Yeah, and we didn't really see the defense get tested here, so we really didn't really see Fenerbahce get put to the test here.
Yeah.
But I think, winning like this 5-0, it's going to give them a lot of confidence heading into next week's fixture against Başakşehir. They have a difficult opening 3 weeks. Başakşehir away next week, and then Trabzonspor at home the week after. So, they're top of the table now, obviously, biggest win of the match day, but that could all change within a week or within 2 weeks' time. So it's going to be we're going to know a lot, I think, about this Fenerbahce, how far ahead they are already. If they come through these first 3 weeks with 7 points, say 7 or 9 points. I think if they come through these first 3 weeks with 9 points, I think we've got a major contender on our hands. And Fenerbahce looked great. And you know what? 3 penalties. Obviously, Twitter was going crazy. And this theater is already starting. Last year it was Galatasaray, now it's Fenerbahce. But if you look at the match, I don't think you can discredit this win. Fenerbahce were so much better than Gazi Shahir. And obviously, when you're not actually watching the match and you see that penalty after 6 minutes, penalty after 30 minutes, penalty after 23 minutes, then you're like, okay, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Like I said, that second one was clear. The third one, if it does make contact with the hand, it's a clear penalty. That first one is a little bit, that could be contested, but again, that's not a clear freebie either. So I think it's a logical win for Fenerbahce. Guys, anything to add here, or can we move over to the transfer segment before Özer has to head off?
Well, can I add some small things about Gary Rodriguez, how I expected him to be, but he really didn't turn out really well, because after his journey to Saudi Arabia and he came, I think he lost a bit of his speed, which he had 2 years ago. And a player with his style needs some other things to his game if his physical state is in a decline, to prevent himself from going down in his career. Like a quick example would be like Volkan Şen and how he got lost after his decline. And he haven't added anything to his game after aging. And a quick add could be Deniz Turca. He came in at 17 minutes and played decent, actually, because I think what Gary lacks, Turca has it, and what Turca lacks, Gary has it as well. Like, they're like opposites of the play styles, like in terms of speed and technical ability wise, which actually makes a good thing about Fenerbahce's rotation system, having this kind of variety of players in the bench in a big marathon of a season. And also, after watching the Fenerbahce game, I think Galatasaray's game could go the same way as Fenerbahce's game did if Selçuk scored the first penalty at the earlier stage of the game.
So let's quickly head over to the transfer talk then for our final segment of this episode. So last week we did a transfer episode and we were talking about Galatasaray's desperate need for a number 6. And as we finished recording, wouldn't you know it, Steven Nzonzi to Galatasaray was basically confirmed, and then the day after, I believe it was already made official, and Galatasaray have loaned Steven Nzonzi from AS Roma on a free loan. They just have to pay his wages, 3.25 million, and they have the option to extend that loan for 500,000 euros for a second season. And of course, they'll have to pay his wages again. If they opt to buy Nzonzi at the end of his first season at Galatasaray, they will have to pay 16 million euros. If they opt to buy him at the end of his second season, they will have to pay 13 million euros. Whether Galatasaray will make that a permanent move or not, I think, on paper at least, an absolutely fantastic move. He was a beast at Sevilla. He's an upgrade over an aging Fernando, I'd say. 29 years old, World Cup winner with France. Umut, your thoughts on the Nzonzi transfer?
Well, Nzonzi, we all know him from Roma and Sevilla. We always known him by his big physique and tough play defensively. And after Fernando's departure to Sevilla, that position needed to be filled urgently, and is a bit too late since we missed the first game of the season, which costed us 3 points already. And how important we'll see at the end of the season. As I mentioned earlier, we needed a guy to fill the number 6 physically, because Seri is such a small guy and couldn't actually fill there himself, and as well aerial threats coming is an important issue as a defensive part of the game. And I think Nzonzi is the man to fill that gap we are needing right now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, 1.96 meter, an absolute intimidating physical specimen. I think he's going to dominate our league.
Yeah, I also, smaller note is he broken a record, like being the tallest guy ever to play for Galatasaray.
Field player, I believe. Outfield player, I guess.
I think amongst goalkeepers as well.
I think you had a goalkeeper that was like 2 meter and 2, no?
I don't know.
Ismail Chipe, wasn't he like 2 meter 2?
No,
or
no. Ismail Chipe and Eray are both 195.
Okay. Well, anyway, I think this is a great move on paper. At least, of course, we'll have to wait and see how it turns out. But I can't really see this not turn out great, because I think for our league, he's just such a great player at a great age still. Obviously, at Roma, he didn't really fulfill what they expected of him. They paid almost 30 million euros for him just last summer, and they're already letting him go basically for free now just to get him off the wage bill. Apparently, they bullied him out of the club almost, but I mean, not succeeding at Roma does not mean that you're not a great player. I mean, he was great at Sevilla. I think this is a great coup for Galatasaray. Obviously, it's a high wage, but it's not that bad. 3.25 million, that's not 6 or 7 or so. Then, of course, Pat, do you have anything to add on the Nzonzi deal? Or are you just like me, envious about it?
Yeah, I think I'm in your side in terms of just wishing that Fenerbahce got him first, because I think he's for no fee whatsoever to the club, and relatively okay wages, like you say, if you compare it to some other Super League players. A great buy basically, and for very little money, being able to extend that for another year as well. Obviously, we'll see what happens with them in Europe, and then at the end of the season as well. But if they, hopefully not, but if they win the league and get Champions League football next year, that means they could keep him for basically a small portion of the fees there. So really good signing, annoyingly.
Yeah, and it's a shame that Özer had to shoot off now, of course, but he only had that 1 hour window, unfortunately. But fortunately enough, there's no news yet on Radamel Falcao. Imagine Falcao came and Özer, his biggest cheerleader, wasn't here to celebrate that. But Radamel Falcao still up in the air. It changes every day. Today the news is again that the Monaco president said he still has a year contract and he has to respect that. There was a quote earlier from their new signing, Dindjer, where he said that he's really happy that Falcao decided to stay. So I don't know what's going on. Umut, what's the latest from the Galatasaray media, so to speak? Are they still adamant that he's coming, or are they slowly but surely starting to lose hope?
Well, I've seen their transfer photo where Islam Slimani was involved as well. So I think they already filled their gap after hoping Falcao's departure. And as well, in Twitter, tonight at 19:05, there will be a cup announcement. But unfortunately, it didn't happen as we all expected, but disappointed after it. I hope he'll come, but I don't think it's healthy to just hoping for a man to come for a whole month, and don't thinking any alternatives if he doesn't decide to come.
It's a strange situation, of course. On paper, Galatasaray have last season's top scorer with Mbaye Diagne, so they should be fine. But in reality, we all know that Diagne is kind of didn't really live up to the expectations, but it's a difficult situation because Galatasaray are under financial fair play. They still have to sell regardless to even clear their. We already discussed this last week. So Falcao, they were hoping would be a free transfer, so an easy fix, short term, a really good high profile striker for free on a high wage, okay, but they were hoping for that, but that I don't think that's going to happen. Monaco are not going to let him go for free. I said that last time. I stand by that. I don't even think their position has changed at all. I think they've gotten even more firm in that position. So I don't think Galatasaray will be getting him for free. So that jeopardizes the move, I believe. So we'll have to wait and see. But there is one really big move in the Super League that happened, and we already spoke about it earlier. Daniel Sturrdige has officially been confirmed as Trabzonspor's new signing. They signed him on a free transfer. They paid him a €2 million signing on bonus. That's a hefty sum. But his 2 + 1 year contract, he will earn only 1.5 million a year. It's not a lot if you look at, what his peers are earning in the same in the Super League, I would say. Players from a similar stature. Obviously, Daniel Sturridge has a long watch list of injuries, but if he can stay fit, he could be of great value for Trabzonspor. Personally, I wouldn't have wanted to sign him at Besiktas because of that injury track record, and I would have assumed that he would have been earning a lot of money. But really, at these numbers, I think it's a small risk. Honestly, 1.5 million a year. Okay, you're out 2 million in terms of the signing fee, but still, he's only 29 years old. Pat, would you have taken the gamble if you were in charge at Fenerbahce?
Oof, I mean, I don't know what the financial state of Trabzonspor is. Obviously, that plays sort of a major factor. If it would be in Fenerbahce, for example, and to some extent we've covered that position. But I think for Trabzonspor, just not just for the player himself, he's a goal scorer and he's proved that throughout his career. But I think also just to also boost the Trabzonspor name to some extent, I think that's going to play an issue. I'm sure we all remember that they had quite a successful social media campaign with their shirt announcement that got shared by the likes of Piqué and Barcelona, which was seen by millions of people just on Twitter alone. And there was also kind of with the Sturridge dance, if we can call it that, where Trabzon fans were suddenly doing their little shuffle to encourage him to come. I don't think we quite saw a Darius Vassell-esque arrival into Trabzon from him, but I think just to get a name that's quite well known in the UK and across Europe, banging in the goals in a league that's well respected, and like you say, playing Fenerbahce in 2 weeks' time, and that's also to some extent a mini derby in itself with the two teams there. But big games sort of coming up, and I think for profile, having that also as the more junior members of the team, having sort of a quite experienced player in the squad will be a bonus for Trabzonspor. So I'd say, regardless of what happens, regardless of how much you might be missing down the line because of injuries, I think good purchase.
And while you were talking, I basically talked myself into it. For these numbers, I would have taken the gamble too at Besiktas. I think 1.5 million a year, basically 2.5 if he stays for 2 years. That is still not that much. I mean, okay, you run the risk that he's gonna miss so many games out injured, but you also have that chance that if he stays fit and manages to play 25 out of 34 games or 27 or whatever, he could bang in 25. He's a really good player. Umut, would you have taken the gamble at Galatasaray? Maybe you don't need him at Galatasaray, but what do you say? Do you understand that Trabzon are taking this, in my opinion, relatively low risk? Because
because they already have a target man-esque player, Sorlot, a tall guy. So they needed a poacher kind of player to balance the striker rotation out. So I think it could be a good gamble on Trabzonspor because these monies are nothing compared to what he earned earlier in Premier League, and it's never easy to take an Englishman outside of Premier League because he has too many choices. He may go to Championship or he may go to a lower side of Premier League division, like a club like Newcastle or something, West Bromwich Albion or something. He has too many options, and he even played in West Bromwich earlier on in recent years. So it's a big move coming.
Do you think that's him putting off a move maybe until after the transfer window in England closed put him in a disadvantage? Because I'm quite surprised that he took this deal, because I can't imagine that he couldn't get that elsewhere in England.
I think he balanced out his options, so he didn't think he'll find a place in Liverpool this season because of the quality Liverpool has right now. And also the injuries which let him down in the recent years. So I think he might have thought, if I play constantly, I will find myself again after some time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely true. Anyway, we have one more big transfer news that was confirmed just before we started recording. Georges-Kévin Nkoudou from Tottenham Hotspur will join Besiktas, and not on a loan or anything, on a permanent move. And Besiktas are paying 5 million euros for the 24-year-old winger, left winger, French left winger, and I am absolutely baffled, astounded, and puzzled by this move. I don't get it. It's a lot of money, 5 million. That's a lot of money for Besiktas. Besiktas are not a club that easily spend more than 4 million on a single player. That rarely happens. Like Dembaba, Adem Ljajic. That's the only ones in recent years. Well, we spent 4.5 or something on Lens too, which was a huge, disaster in hindsight. But we don't. Besiktas are not a club that spend high transfer fees, and 5 million is starting. I know for Galatasaray fans, they're like, oh, 5 million, what's that? But for Besiktas, that's a fee that doesn't usually leave the pocketbook really easily. So I'm really baffled by that. Not so much because they paid it for an important position, but because they paid it on a player that in the last 3 years has played less than 2,000 minutes in all competitions. Or last 4 years, sorry. So I find it absolutely astounding. I don't understand it. I have very little hope for this to turn out well, because the deal is structured in such a way that it almost can't be a win situation, even if he does really well, because apparently Besiktas are paying 5 million euros to Tottenham. On top of that, they're giving 50% of his next sale as well. Now, I am assuming, because this is usually how deals are structured, that 50% is on the profit of next sale. So that means if Besiktas sell him for 6 million, that's 1 million profit. So 500,000 would go to Tottenham. So they basically then, Besiktas earn 500,000 on him, basically, if that would be the case. So even if he does really well, I don't know if Besiktas can ever sell him at a high enough fee for it to be really worth it in terms of profit. And when we factor in that 50%, and then his contract, 4 years at 1.65 million up to 2 million with bonuses. That's okay in theory for a player that's hopefully going to start every match, but it's just a huge question mark for me because he has played so little. And he got just absolutely no chances at Tottenham. Played really briefly at Burnley on loan, played only like 6 games there, went to Monaco in the second half of the season last season, but unfortunately for him, he got a hamstring injury, and that took him out for nearly 3 months, so he missed almost the entire second half of the season last season. So, I don't know, guys, can you make sense of this move, Pat?
I don't know if it was you or it was another Besiktas fan, but I did see them sort of speaking about the lack of wingers, I believe, quality winners at Besiktas. So,
for sure. Besiktas desperately needed a left winger. I'm not arguing that. That was I think a 6 is important to get to, but the left winger was the most important position to fill. So that's not the issue. The issue is just the player and the money spent on him. Is this a player that's worth 5 million euros for Besiktas? Given the fact that he's barely played ever since leaving France?
I guess so, yeah. But, like I said, the profile of both Besiktas and the Super League, I think, is high enough that it's a good stage for a player of his age to potentially see it as an opportunity to move on to some extent. And, I guess that's 50% is a high number in terms of how much they'll get back, and therefore how much they'd have to sell him to make money off of him to some extent, especially with financial fair play sort of breathing down everyone's necks. But it could be the opportunity that a young, potentially talented player, if he was signed for the likes of Tottenham, to at least reach some of his potential in a league where you've got people watching from across the world, keeping tabs on, being able to watch highlights like we do. So again, could be a risk, but I think it might be the opportunity that he needs to make a name for himself, and in a very respectable team and with a great fan base like Besiktas.
And Umut, what do you think? Can you make sense of this move? From Besiktas's perspective, I would say, like, not so much from him. I get that he wants to jump on the chance to go to a club where he can play and where he can hopefully rekindle his career. But from Besiktas's perspective, a player that's completely sidetracked at Tottenham, has absolutely no chance of playing there, he's basically dead weight for them. They should be begging someone to take him off their wage bill, and Besiktas are still paying €5 million for the guy. Do you get that?
Well, if you want to make a logic, you are buying a player from Premier League, and considering the weight of that league...
yeah, but not a proven player.
I know. He's not the main man, and he's not the starter. You know.
He's not even a regular reserve. He barely ever comes on as a sub.
Yes, I think it's because of the age he's in. Like you can't count him as a youngster. So I think that money is because of the potential he possesses right now.
Okay. Well, let me throw this out to you guys. If you had the choice between this €5 million question mark, or let's say Jevgen Konoplyanka for $3 million on a 2+1 or a 3-year contract, would you go for this guy for $5 million or Konoplyanka for $3.5 million, who is 29, almost 30 years old? Pat, what would you pick? Konoplyanka or this guy? Or Georges-Kévin Nkoudou?
I mean, to be honest, I would have gone for Konoplyanka, to be honest. I think if I was playing it safe, I'd be getting more sort of value for money with Konoplyanka than I would do with the guy from Tottenham.
Yeah. And what do you think, Umut? Who would you have opted for, Konoplyanka or someone else, but more proven?
Well, taking Konoplyanka, you'll know what to expect, and I think you have the accurate team for Konoplyanka to play as well. He will be a good player in a rotation system, but Nkoudou, I think his name is pronounced that way. So it's a gamble, you know. He could be good or he could be really bad. It's a really big gamble, but I think...
exactly. I mean, Sturrdige is a gamble, but it's a small gamble, I think, for the money involved.
I think Abdullah Avcı wanted it to be this way, to like take the average of the age in the team in a lower form.
Yeah, I can get it from that perspective, but I think there's players at that age, 24, 25, 26. You can get players for $5 million that have played a lot more in the past couple of years. Maybe not a player from the Premier League, but maybe someone in League maybe somewhere in Holland, maybe, I don't know. You know, there's plenty of places. At the end of the day, apart from this, I think Besiktas have had a really good transfer window in terms of the players they've gotten. I think Tyler Boyd was a spot-on signing. Victor Ruiz was a good signing in terms of profile. Obviously, we still have to wait and see if he turns out well, but his first match was very promising. Pedro Rebocho, we haven't seen him yet, but that profile fits. I think Besiktas have made a lot of good moves in terms of finding players that will fit the football Abdullah Avcı wants to play. So in that regard, I can only assume that they did the same here with Nkoudou. The only question I have is, how did they really form his profile when he hasn't properly played? I mean, are they going back and watching him at Nantes? Are they going back and watching his matches at Olympique Marseille? I honestly don't know. It's a player that Tottenham paid €11 million for. Now, if they would have paid 20 or 25 or 30 million euros, then I would understand this deal. But there's a player they paid 11 million for. He's clearly not in their future plans. I don't know. 5 million just seems very, very, very steep, despite the fact that he's only 24. But yeah, I don't know. I hope he proves me wrong. I really, really hope he proves me wrong, because I know I'm being extremely pessimistic here. And this is the most pessimistic I think I've ever been in my entire life on a relatively big transfer. because this is a big fee, like I said, for Besiktas. This is without a doubt the most pessimistic I've ever been about a transfer with a decent fee involved. But I don't know. I hope he proves me wrong, and I hope he has a Henry Onyekuru effect, which I saw some people say, maybe he'll turn out to be Besiktas' Henry Onyekuru. To those people, I say, guys, look at Henry Onyekuru's track record. Look at what he did in Belgium. Look at what he already did in his career. You cannot compare the two. That's silly. Anyway. That's it for me for transfer notes. I don't know if you guys have anything else left to talk about, because we didn't speak about anything regarding Fenerbahce because there doesn't seem to be anything big. Pat, is there something you still want to throw in here, or are we done for the night?
Yeah, I think obviously we've got just for Fenerbahce some tougher games coming up. Obviously, Gaziantep was a relatively easy start for us compared to the other big clubs. But we're facing Başakşehir away. I say away with quotation marks because obviously you know what Başakşehir are like, who did lose 3-0 to a relatively good Malatyaspor side, but we'll see what happens there. And then again, home to Trabzonspor. It could be that we end up with just the 3 points after 3 games, or it could be we end up with 9. I think it'd be interesting to see. However, like I just did mention earlier, I think we just do need a sort of backup striker just to be the sort of in-between of Muric and Sturrdige, because I think you're just putting too much pressure in that case on both of them.
Sturrdige is obviously a number 10. When I said that, I thought you meant you needed another number 10.
Yeah, I think there'd just be sort of too much pressure on. So, the likes of, who do we used to have? Super Seni, I think it was back in the day, who just kind of, he'd just be here on the bench all the time, but he delivered when we needed him.
Yeah, maybe. I'm definitely of the opinion that Fenerbahce can still use a second striker, but I think we can say that Muric is worthy of that first spot, and I think he deserves this season too.
100%,
I think he deserves this season to show whether he's worthy of that place or not. But the signs early on definitely indicate that he's worthy of it. Umut, anything left to add for this first episode of season 2 of Football a la Turca, or rather the 2019-20 Super League season?
I think all spoken. Nothing specific to add.
Okay, then I'm still gonna run down quickly the fixtures for match day 2. So the fixtures for match day 2 on Friday, Besiktas are already hosting Göztepe, so they'll have the chance to rebound. Then on Saturday, Ankaragücü hosts Istiqbal Mobilya Kayserispor. Alanyaspor will host Kasımpaşa. Başakşehir host Fenerbahce, and then on Sunday, Trabzonspor host Yeni Malatyaspor. Galatasaray host Konyaspor. Antalyaspor host Yükseldenizlispor. And then on the final match on Monday, Gazişehir will have a chance to scratch that 0 from their record against Sturrdige, who have that same opportunity. So 2 newly promoted sides on Monday against each other. That's for match day 2. Well, that'll do it for this week of Football a la Turca, the first episode of the second season of our show. So I want to thank you very much for listening, Turcaholics. Pat, thank you for joining me. Umut, thank you for joining me. Özer, of course, thanks for joining, even though he's already been off for the last 20 minutes or so. And of course, Burak, he will be back soon. He will be back next week. So, guys, thank you. And to you, goodbye and good night, and have a great week.
Thanks for having us. Thank you.
Cheers.
Take care.